sharing some of my insights and what's shifted for me after doing this year of Course in Miracles practice. So last year, not only did I go through the workbook, but I recorded 365 videos, which are all here on this channel, where I'm combining EFT tapping, which is a practice I do, and at least for several of the early lessons, for example, just doing the exercises in the workbook and then tapping, and it helps me kind of stay connected to my body, helps me digest everything more slowly so that I'm really ingraining the lesson and actually doing it. And so it was a very committed process for me, and went into the exercises with more consistency and more accuracy, I guess you could say, as far as like actually doing it and being present. So there were some really big takeaways from all of this. And the first one, which can sound obvious, but as human beings, it's really easy to kind of overcomplicate this, which is to actually do the lessons and just do what they say is very powerful, and it's more challenging at times than it seems. Right? Some of the later ones are obviously a little more dense or complex in some ways, but the topic of mind training, which is how the Course refers to it, is really subtle and quite deep because, for example, if you are to do even the first exercise, right, to actually sort of stay present with anything for a minute is quite an exercise for the mind. Right? You might notice within 5 seconds, maybe even 10 times since this video started, your mind is thinking about this, it's going somewhere else, it's simultaneously doing something else. So you might be looking at lesson 1 even saying, well, this cup doesn't mean anything. Oh, but look at the color of that. Oh, I got to take the recycling out, right? It does that. And there's even a line, I don't have the exact quote, but in the text where it's like, we're far too tolerant of mind wandering. And so really the power of our minds when it can be more focused and in tune to what we're doing, these exercises that might say, only do it for a minute. Well, a minute is actually quite intensive for a state of presence and focus. And so it does that very, very gently in the beginning of the Course, and of course the structure, the order of each lessons. I think there was a real appreciation for actually doing what it says. And I did my best. Of course, I didn't nail the things like, okay, do this for a minute or 5 minutes every hour. I'm not sure anyone does that unless they're in like a monastery dedicated to it. But really making more of an effort to do that, you realize, like, okay, there's something to this. Right? I noticed there's a tendency with not only myself, but people I've worked with and just people in general to kind of take something that's given to us, like a lesson or a practice. It's like, okay, yeah, I kind of get that, but like, what's the deeper meaning? What's the bigger thing? And before you know it, you're on like some Facebook group talking about the deeper principles of the Course and what does it really mean by this, instead of just focusing on just doing what the lesson says for the day, which really, well, how do I practice? Well, you have 365 days telling you exactly what to do. So to really make an effort to just follow the instructions and treat it as the mind training that it is, really has shifted my mind in a lot of ways that we'll get into. Another big takeaway, a theme that stood out for me in the recurring nature of this subject, in the workbook in particular, is this distinction between two voices, right? The two voices we can listen to. And my takeaway so far is that's a big essence of what our free will is, right? Not to try to be a teacher about free will or metaphysics, which is, not something I'm qualified to talk about really, but this real emphasis on we can be listening to the voice of the ego, or in the Course language, it's the Holy Spirit, but this deeper sense that sees reality more accurately and as a bridge between our separated sense of being an ego individual and oneness or connection. So this tuning into even the reality or the existence of these two voices has been huge for me. It's not a new concept for me, even when I first went through the Course, probably 12 years ago or more than 12 years ago at this point. But I was younger and I just kind of did the exercises When I did it now, it's as though I never did it before. But the idea of there being like the ego and something else, right? Whatever background, that language you might use for that, was not new to me. But the emphasis of it here was really, really potent, and to use these lessons and these practices to really be tuning into the fact that most thoughts, for me at least, and probably most humans, are ego-oriented. Okay, I need to do this for me in order to satisfy this need. It's not necessarily, you're not feeling it always as this really selfish act, but it's self-oriented, right? It's, okay, what do I need to do in order to accomplish this and achieve my goals, or get through the day, or get out of this situation, or get this desired outcome or result? Anything self-focused like that, for me at least, the distinction is becoming clear. Most thoughts are ego-oriented, at least earlier on in this process, and this other voice is gentler, and it's more peaceful when being tuned into it. It's not as outcome-oriented. I find there's, Course, of course, says this many times, but an actual feeling of more of a, you could call it a giving quality, but a sense of connection, a sense of sharing, a sense of joining, which is a huge aspect of the Course. It takes the agenda, the strain, and what do I do with this moment and this situation, and how do I make it something, into a more of a listening, almost more of a passive, surrendering type of way of being, where the insight is coming more clear. This is what this moment is asking of me, and this is what this moment is for. And of course, ultimately with the Course, as you especially get further on, kind of everything is for forgiveness, as the Course says it. Everything, every moment is for that, whether that's just to be in your beingness and peacefulness, or to, forgive or be present in that way with what's coming up, or what you're judging, or what you're perceiving. So it's not a small thing. The more it becomes, the more your mind is trained to focus in on a moment-to-moment level of which voice am I listening to, right? And the idea that eventually it is possible to only hear one voice, and the only voice that's really that has your best interest at heart. I love the lesson that says, I do not perceive my own best interests. That one was one of the most useful ones for me to return to, because it's like, well, I need to make this happen. Well, what can I do in this video to get more views and subscribers? All of that. It's like, I don't know what's best for me. But what am I actually, when I tune in, what does that other feeling, that other voice, you might say, what does it want me to do? What's being asked? What is there to say? And as someone who plays jazz for a living, I'm very aware of when I'm thinking about what should I play and what I practice, versus like I'm listening to others, and it's information is sort of coming through. There's a response element. The moment is dictating what to do next. So it's a very real, felt, intuitive thing. It's not a conceptual idea of two voices. So that was a big one for me. Another one that's huge, of course, is every person that you see, like literally everyone, is either your savior or your crucifier, basically. The person that you are sent to hell, so to speak, not to be so dramatic, but in a way, whether or not you are judging them, or the degree to which you are judging them. And simultaneously, to see another without judgment, it's like an opportunity to be fully released. And again, it's just popping in my head. I don't remember the exact quote, but a line about, if you could truly see one brother, with total forgiveness, or as guiltless, then you yourself would be fully released. Now, if you think about that, it's very deep, right? The idea that every person that you encounter, the amount of judgment you feel towards them is affecting you, is what's chaining you or liberating you. Now, when you start extending this, right, think about politicians, think about people whose business practices you don't like. It gets way stickier then, right? So the bar is quite high here. And so it's very common, at least in my experience so far, that there's teachers of all sorts of different practices and stuff who will like be railing on, well, this political person or this system, they're really an ass, or they're so egotistical. And yeah, you can recognize flaws in systems and ways things are running. It's not about having rose-colored glasses, but this to actually take this on of how you are judging or seeing them as basically anything other than their true nature or what they are. To do that as a practice is a very tall order. And so it's not my place to say that it's not like there's no discernment, right? It's not like you're suddenly condoning murder. And this is sort of a mental cop-out that you hear all the time. Well, what about somebody who does that? It's like, well, what's being pointed to here is way past that. It's way past what the physical form, what the mind that might be sick and feels the need to kill people. You're looking way through that to something deeper. And an actual demonstration of oneness, like for someone to say, I've truly realized oneness, wouldn't it make sense that you would actually be perceiving that to attack another is to attack myself? Because they aren't two. And the Course has that metaphor, right, of like you're holding the sword over your own head and when you judge or condemn someone else. And so, well, what would be an extreme example of this? Like, who could actually forgive, someone who's a murderer? Well, what about someone who's actually crucifying you and you forgiving them, like literally crucifying you? So that's the demonstration. That's how I see it. It's like, okay, this is possible. And through that, if we are to believe what we are being told and hopefully experiencing on different levels as you do whatever practice might be, the Course in this case, that you feel the release, you feel a greater sense of expansion as your judgment diminishes, and you feel the contraction as you are judging. And as someone who's, not beyond judgment, very judgmental person much of my life, and very liking to be separated. Like, I like time alone, people are too much, people are annoying, right? This is a tall order, this is challenging, but it's where I found the most growth for me. And it has actually changed me in a lot of ways where it's mind-boggling to me that I'm like in a supermarket or I'm, out and about now, and I'm actually not like forcing myself to do it, not trying to think nicer thoughts, but just seeing others in this completely different way. And again, I can't pinpoint to a moment. I think it's just doing the lessons and doing the practice. So it's not like I'm out there like squinting my eyes and trying, okay, stop judging. It's just actually a shift in the automatic response. And it's far from, I think, where this can ultimately go. But just noticing that that's a real change that's happening without conscious effort. It's quite huge and really quite worth it. quite worth taking it on. It's like I said, shoot for the stars, right? Even if I never reach anywhere near that level of complete non-judgment and complete non-separation, by even entertaining that, it's shifted things so much. So another aspect that I really, really I really love about the Course is this real tightrope it walks about what you might call non-duality and different sort of esoteric spiritual teachings and observations about the nature of reality and the practice itself. So the Course will say things in the lessons that are very, very nuanced. And it will say, for example, outright, like, this is a dream, but while you are believing you are in the dream, the best way out is forgiveness. Forgiveness is the way to forgive the dream, to see, that is the way to see through it, to see it as a dream. And when the world is forgiven, it will transform. And it will talk about time and that this never really happened. We are constantly recreating that moment and looking back on it, which I've loved in a lot of Eastern and Buddhist traditions, that sort of way of seeing time, and occasionally even having the moment of popping out and sort of perceiving that, like, wow, it is just the mind constantly creating a timeline, creating a universe of time and space that's just right here, right now. It's not actually there. But the Course talks about that, but is giving a practice to really, I think, constantly weave this tightrope of not using those ideas as a cop-out, which the mind loves to do, right? Well, the world is just a dream. And doesn't the Course say it's not real, so why do the 365? All of that is, to me, a complete waste of time. Because if the Course in Miracles was just saying, well, it's just a dream, then it would be a one-sentence book. Right? The book would say, well, it's all a dream, the end. It's not. It's why have 365 lessons? It's to really massage and, adjust and actually attune you to some of these things so that hopefully you really experience them. And I love the way it does that. I've heard teachers from different backgrounds like kind of knock on the Course, like say it's lesser, and they've even told me it's not that good, it's kind of waste of time or whatever. And I really don't agree, obviously. And I think it's very, very skilled and artful, more than most teachings, at weaving this tightrope. Again, because there is a lot of content out there that's just like, well, you're already awake, or this is a dream, so there's nothing to do. But it's so clear as day. You can watch followers of these methods at times who are clearly traumatized, who are clearly just trying to get it. Well, I know it's all a dream, and I know it's not real, and I know it's all non-dual, and they're trying to adjust the language, and clearly there's trauma or other things there, and it's just not helpful to just say it's just a dream, it's just a dream, it's not real, right? This is very, very nuanced, and many of the lessons are really, really subtle with the language, right? It's not just that the world does not exist, but the appearance of the world now, if you are still seeing it, if you are still perceiving time, then it is to be used as a teaching device, and to be use this hearing of the other voice to what is the purpose of this world that I seem to be perceiving. Right now, isn't that more subtle and nuanced than walking around clearly experiencing myself as a separated person, talking about non-duality concepts, or saying like, well, there's no one here, having arguments online about it. I refer to that sometimes because I see it often. I used to kind of observe it, and now I just see it as a literal waste of time. Like, it would be better off doing anything else, but especially just doing the actual practices that are laid out here, or any place you're finding value from. So and true forgiveness, right? Seeing beyond the illusion to it having never happened. So if you truly perceive that this is a dream, or see through it, see to the nature of what it is, then there actually isn't another person there attacking you. But if you just try to use that as a thought, while clearly you are experiencing and your nervous system is reacting to, this person is a jerk, right? That's not it. We are being asked, in my interpretation and experience working through these lessons, to do things to help actually lift the veil and see through that. Kind of goes back to the first point, right? It's a practice. It's a mind training. It is a way of retraining and experiencing and reconditioning, turning the ego on its head, flipping the whole world upside down as a practice, so that this can be an actual experience. And it's not I'm not interested in it as a philosophy course to discuss and debate. Maybe the last thing was the special function, which is brought up at different times in the course, and I think again walks that tightrope pretty well, very well, of course. Of okay, for in this dream, or whatever you want to call it, clearly there is this Evan character here, right? And according to the course, there's a special function. There's a way that this person can contribute, in a way that we each feel more aligned. That when you're listening and in the flow of that other voice, well, why do I make videos? We're doing EFT tapping, and why do I work with people in that way now? And why did I pick up the bass and be my primary profession for the last, couple decades now? Well, because I don't know why, right? I don't care why, really. It's not a why question. It's just, okay, if I'm tuned into the body, or tuned into that other voice, that's what I'm drawn to. That's where it feels like This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, it's not always convenient, right? Like, it's not always the thing that's going to make you the most money or what people agree with the most. I was really concerned with uploading the 365 Course in Miracles lessons, right? I felt kind of compelled to do it. And obviously, something gave me the follow through to actually record 365 of them. But it wasn't super comfortable. It was like, people are going to think this is weird. What if some of my musicians colleagues see this? I really thought some of my clients, because when I do EFT and stuff, working with people, I'm not bringing in course concepts, right? If someone is coming to me with trauma, we're completely tuned in to the trauma, however person's experiencing or whatever they're working through. I'm not like, hey, well, remember the course says it's all a dream. Like, none of that, right? So I was very concerned on some level, like, oh, if I put up Course in Miracles content, is this going to affect how I'm perceived? Is this going to make people think I'm just this weird out there person and you shouldn't, do any kind of practical work with me or emotional work? And honestly, I didn't have that response. If I did, no one said it to my face. And I was surprised how many people were like, oh, it's really cool that you did that. And some people that I know are actually like, they're doing it. They're actually doing the videos and doing the tapping. And so it was really cool, but it wasn't comfortable in the moment, right? There was a feeling, though, you might call it that other voice. It was like, for some reason, this idea is coming to me, and it's more than an idea. It's just, this is something I feel drawn to do. And if I were to say as a concept, well, the world is already whatever, this is a dream and everyone's awake anyway, so why make the video? I think that's all cop-out. That's thinking, right? And the idea of a special function just seems sort of self-obvious, that clearly people have different talents and abilities, and the imagery is kind of beautiful that, through this, the dream can dissolve, and it's kind of, eventually it's going to evolve beyond this to where each person is no longer experiencing the separated self. And of course, I listen to and like teachers of disciplines and spirituality that have nothing to do with Course in Miracles, but I'm finding a lot of common threads here. And this just was a very, very good year in terms of these lessons, really seeing the phenomenal number of angles that are covered. And one more thing, maybe another thing pops up as I think it's the last one, but there one lesson in particular, I forget, 180 or 180 something. There is a lesson that basically is like inner child work, and everything inner child work is all about, and how there is a child within you that actually is sort of the gateway to realization. I made a separate video on it. I didn't upload it yet. I might have to revisit it, but it is powerful, especially if you do any inner child work, which I do, and a technique called reparenting. And I sent it to someone I studied with, who does reparenting, and studied that from a therapist. And it almost maybe, or actually was in tears, just like, look at the text of this lesson. It's the only lesson that does that, but it's so beautifully said. And it really captures this whole space of a type of emotional work that's really powerful. So I'm sure there's a lot more I could say, but it really, for me, reconnected the importance. Say it's a type of work I'm interested in anyway, but the way it was like, yeah, not only is that important to connect with what you might call the childlike innocence within you, but it's knocking at the door waiting for you to return. And for a lot of people, and a lot of people I work with, and how I approach things a lot, even when I'm doing EFT or other practices, it's a really great way to tune into compassion. Because if you're just thinking your own thoughts, for example, of like, oh, I'm a jerk, or I shouldn't have said that, or what's wrong with me? Why am I not further on the path? I've been doing the course for 15 years. What's wrong with me? But if you picture a young child who you love and care about coming up to you and say, I'm a bad kid. Why didn't I, this didn't go well at school. What's wrong with me? I'm a bad person. This compassion sort of wells up in a more natural way. And so I found that very useful in my own life, but to see the Course emphasize it in that lesson and the way it did was very powerful. So You can see I'm a fan. Obviously, I got a lot out of the year. I've also been listening to other teachers from the course, different people on YouTube. David Hoffmeister, Aaron Abke. He's younger than me, but awesome. He actually teaches the course. At least that's one component of it. The Circle of Atonement, very cool. I joined that, and different classes each week that really will like take one section of the course and really expand on it, because it's so dense, right? So like when Robert and Emily are kind of breaking down, like, yeah, let's spend an hour on this one paragraph saying what it's actually asking of us, or saying this is what's happening. Like, wow. And it's so kind of accurate and useful. So yeah, if you enjoy exploring the course, like I said, there's teachers, and they're all here on YouTube, and there's others I'm sure I'm forgetting, Carol Howe, yeah. But for the year, for me, the practice, right? It's doing the lessons and doing the practice much more than just listening or just being tangentially interested. So that's some of the shifts for me, the much less judgment, the actually perceiving people differently, the tuning into the other voice a little more easily, noticing how constant the thoughts are being self-oriented are, getting a little more artful at flipping that around, noticing when it's all about me, and shifting to a place of more giving, joining. Of course, being a musician, I've experienced, that's when it's the best. It's like the best experiences I've ever had in life in many ways. It's like everything is happening, and the musicians, they literally join into this one thing. So that gives me a very clear frame of reference where it's like, no, that's what we're to be doing with this whole world, right? That we can actually all combine in this way. That would be super amazing. So those are thoughts, insights after 365 days. Like I said, if you want to try any of those tappings, all 365 of them are here on this channel, the playlist, Course in Miracles playlist. Hope you found that interesting on some level. I'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts. If you've done the course or are doing it now, some of the things you might be experiencing, or what's going on for you with it. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you on another video soon. All right, take care.